Have you ever felt that a single moment could alter the course of history, a moment so charged with raw emotion and defiance that it forever changes the fabric of an entire institution? Picture this: a humid Tuesday morning, the kind where the air feels thick with secrets and anticipation, as an unexpected force steps into a world that has long forgotten what true respect means. Imagine a scene where every whispered word, every sidelong glance, and every silent judgment conspires to reveal a deep-rooted culture built on indifference and entitlement. What if, in that very moment, one act of bold defiance could ignite a revolution of accountability and change? In the heart of a small town nestled among rolling hills, a place where traditions run deep and the past clings to every corner, there unfolds a story that challenges everything you thought you knew about power, respect, and redemption. Have you ever wondered how a single decision, made in the face of overwhelming odds, can shake the very foundations of an entire community? What would you do if you were the one standing up to a system that has normalized disrespect and injustice? Today, we invite you to step into a narrative that begins with the quiet hum of an ordinary day and escalates into a confrontation so intense that it leaves everyone questioning their values. Imagine a man, a leader, who chooses not to wear the uniform of authority but instead opts for plain clothes, a deliberate choice meant to strip away the trappings of power and reveal the naked truth of a department in need of transformation. Can you see him, walking among those who once ignored him, his presence a silent challenge to a culture steeped in complacency and prejudice? How would you react if you found yourself in a room where every gesture, every word, was a testament to the deep scars left by years of unchecked arrogance? Picture the scene: a modest police precinct, its walls echoing with the sounds of routine chatter and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. In this setting, a man enters, unassuming in appearance but burning with an inner resolve to expose the hidden rot within. As he navigates the corridors, his eyes are not merely observing, they are searching for the truth in the silent expressions of those around him. Have you ever felt the weight of anticipation, knowing that beneath the surface of everyday life lies a story waiting to be uncovered? What secrets are hidden in the mundane, and how do they shape the destiny of those who dare to challenge the norm? Now, let us dive deeper into the tension that grips this moment. Imagine a group of officers gathered in a quiet corner, sharing idle banter, their laughter tinged with a hint of disdain for anyone who doesn't conform to their unspoken rules. Suddenly, a voice sharp, cutting, and laced with arrogance breaks the monotony. It is a moment of unexpected cruelty, a deliberate act of disrespect that shatters the fragile calm. Have you ever witnessed an act of contempt so brazen that it forces you to confront the ugly truth about power dynamics? What would it feel like to have your dignity besmirched in front of an audience that revels in such indignity? Now, imagine that very moment magnified: a single drop of spit, a symbol of utter disrespect, thrown not just at an individual, but at the ideals of service and honor. This isn't just about personal affront, it's about the systemic failure to uphold the values that bind a community together. What would it take for you to stand up against such blatant disregard? Could a single act of defiance serve as the spark that ignites a movement for change, compelling those around you to re-examine their own complicity? As the story unfolds, the tension intensifies. Our protagonist, a man whose quiet strength is matched only by his unwavering commitment to justice, steps forward to confront this culture head-on. His decision to approach the situation not with anger, but with a resolve to transform, a resolve to make every person, regardless of their rank or background, feel seen and respected. Have you ever met someone who, despite the odds, believes that even the smallest act of decency can catalyze monumental change? How would you feel if you were that person, standing in a room filled with skeptics, determined to rewrite the narrative of a broken system? In this moment of reckoning, every eye in the room is fixed on him. The silence that follows his first words is heavy with the promise of transformation. His message is clear: respect is not a privilege, it's a fundamental right. But the questions remain: can a single leader's vision overcome decades of entrenched habits? Is it possible to restore dignity and trust in a place where they have long been taken for granted? What does it take to build a community where every individual is valued, and every act of disrespect is met with an unyielding stand for justice? Consider the impact of these questions on your own life. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you witnessed injustice, yet felt powerless to stop it? What if, in that moment, you had the courage to act not just for yourself, but for everyone who had been silenced by the status quo? This is not just a story, it is a call to action, an invitation to reflect on the power of individual choice and the profound impact it can have on a collective future. As you listen to this unfolding narrative, allow yourself to be drawn into the suspense. Imagine the ripple effects of that one moment of courage, a moment that challenges the very fabric of a society built on assumptions and unchecked authority. What if the change you long for begins with one small act of defiance, one brave step toward accountability? How would your world transform if everyone dared to uphold the values of respect and integrity, even in the face of overwhelming opposition? Now, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what are you willing to stand up for when you encounter injustice? Have you ever witnessed a situation where a single act of bravery shifted the balance of power? Reflect on these questions as you prepare to embark on a journey through a story that is as much about the struggle for respect as it is about the relentless pursuit of truth. This is the moment here the ordinary meets the extraordinary, a moment here the seeds of change are sown in the fertile ground of courage and determination. It is a story that will take you from the depths of despair to the heights of hope, challenging you to see the beauty in the fight for a better tomorrow. So, as you settle in to listen, remember that every story of transformation begins with a single spark, an idea, a word, an act of defiance that dares to defy the status quo. Are you ready to discover how one man's unwavering commitment to justice could change an entire system? Can you imagine a world where every act of disrespect is met with the power of accountability, and where every small gesture of kindness paves the way for a brighter future? Let these questions guide you as you join us on this journey, a journey where every heartbeat, every word, and every act of courage is a step toward a world defined not by fear and indifference, but by hope, respect, and the unbreakable bonds of community. Stay with us, as the story that unfolds is more than just a tale of conflict, it is a testament to the transformative power of standing up for what is right, reminder that even in the darkest moments, the light of courage can shine through. What will you do when faced with injustice? How far are you willing to go to defend the values that matter most? The answers lie ahead, waiting to be discovered in a story that dares to change everything you thought you knew about power, respect, and redemption. Marcus Carter, the newly appointed police chief, pulled his car up to the modest precinct in the heart of Greenwood, a small town nestled among the gentle rolling hills of eastern North Carolina. Choosing to dress in a simple plaid shirt, worn jeans, and scuffed sneakers, Marcus deliberately forewent the formal uniform he had once worn for decades. His plain clothes were meant to obscure his true identity so that he might observe the inner workings of his department unfiltered by ceremony. For over 20 years, Marcus had steadily climbed the ranks in law enforcement, and now he believed that real change would only come from seeing the department as it truly was, raw and unguarded. On that humid Tuesday morning, as officers began arriving at the precinct, Marcus quietly surveyed the parking lot. He noticed groups of officers engaged in casual banter and exchanging sidelong glances. His recent appointment had been announced just days before, and by choosing to remain inconspicuous, he ensured that no one recognized him immediately. With a deep breath, Marcus adjusted the brim of his baseball cap, preparing himself for a day that promised both challenges and opportunities. The task ahead was monumental. He was determined to root out the toxic culture that had long permeated the department, even if it meant facing resistance head-on. Marcus entered the building through a side door, deliberately bypassing the more formal entryway where official greetings were customary. The interior was functional rather than ornate, polished tile floors, the hum of telephones, and a low murmur of conversation filled the space. He moved with deliberate calm, his eyes scanning groups of officers clustered around desks, some exchanging quick jokes, others buried in paperwork. Every detail was noted by Marcus, whose sole focus was to understand the day-to-day dynamics and hidden undercurrents of the precinct. Without warning, a sharp voice disrupted the low hum of activity. "Hey, you!" A white officer called out as he strode purposefully toward Marcus. The officer, whose badge read Officer Johnson, wore a smug expression that spoke of entitlement and condescension. Behind him, several colleagues leaned casually against a wall, their eyes filled with curious amusement. Before Marcus could offer any greeting, Officer Johnson sneered, "Lost, are we? This isn't some shelter. You need to take that mess somewhere else." His tone was laced with arrogance, as if Marcus were an unwanted intruder rather than a fellow officer. Marcus paused momentarily, feeling the sting of the insult as the words hit him like a heavy blow. Instead of reacting immediately, he allowed the situation to unfold, knowing that every detail would add to his understanding of the department's deep-seated issues. Officer Johnson continued, raising his voice so that the nearby officers could hear, "Don't you hear me? Get out of here." His words were punctuated by raucous laughter from the group, some slapping tables in amusement while others smirked in silent approval. Though his heart pounded, Marcus maintained his composure. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and retrieved a clean handkerchief to discreetly wipe the spit that had been hurled at him. His actions were deliberate and measured, a silent but firm statement against the degrading act. Looking directly at Officer Johnson, Marcus's calm voice broke through the mocking laughter. "Is this how you treat every person who walks through these doors?" His tone carried disappointment and quiet authority. Officer Johnson only smirked wider as he retorted, "Only the ones who don't belong here." The onlookers' laughter swelled in response, but Marcus did not engage further. Instead, he turned and continued walking down the hallway, leaving behind the group and the bitter echoes of that initial encounter. Soon, the intercom in the building crackled to life, summoning all personnel to the briefing room. As officers filed in, some clutching steaming coffee cups, others engaged in light, nervous banter, the atmosphere began to shift. Marcus, still in plain clothes and with his folder bearing the official seal of the precinct clutched in his hand, entered through a side door. From his concealed position, he observed the room filling with familiar faces. Among those present was Captain Daniels, a sturdy man with a graying mustache whose presence commanded respect and attention. Captain Daniels soon called for order. "All right, everyone, settle down," the captain said in a steady, authoritative tone. "Today, we have an important introduction." A hush fell over the room as the officers gathered closer. "As you all know, our former chief retired last month. We have been waiting for someone who can lead us into a new era, and it is my honor to introduce our new police chief, a man with an outstanding record and a clear vision for reform." At that moment, Marcus stepped forward. His measured footsteps caused the chatter to dwindle to a murmur, and all eyes in the room turned toward him. With quiet dignity, he placed his folder on the lectern and slowly surveyed the room. The tension was palpable. In that instant, Officer Johnson's earlier smirk faltered, and the reality of Marcus's true identity began to sink in for many. Faces that had once been dismissive now registered shock, disbelief, and a dawning respect. "Good morning, Marcus began in a firm, resonant voice. My name is Marcus Carter, and as of today, I am your new chief of police. His announcement was met with a stunned silence that underscored the gravity of the moment. Marcus continued, I chose to come in plain clothes today because I wanted to see our department as it truly is without the filter of protocol and pretense. What I observed was more than just routine, it was a reflection of a culture that no longer serves the community or the values we stand for. A murmur of discomfort rippled through the room, but Marcus held up a hand, and the sound gradually subsided. In the time I've been here, I have witnessed behaviors that are not only unprofessional but completely unacceptable. I am here to tell you that the era of disrespect and disregard ends now. His words struck like a hammer, and even Officer Johnson could not mask his growing unease. Taking a purposeful step toward the edge of the lectern, Marcus continued, respect is not optional in this precinct. It is the very foundation of our duty to each other and to the community we serve. Without it, we fail at our most essential mission. His gaze swept across the room, making sure every officer understood that his message was not negotiable. This morning, some among you laughed at what you assumed was a powerless man being humiliated. But let me be clear, every single person who walks through these doors deserves respect, regardless of rank or appearance. As his words resonated, Marcus locked eyes with Officer Johnson, a stare that lasted long enough to dissolve the officer's bravado into crimson shame. Officer Johnson, Marcus said steadily, when you spat in my face, you not only disrespected me, you disrespected the badge, the oath, and the very community we are sworn to protect. That single act is emblematic of all that is wrong in this department. For a moment, Officer Johnson's voice faltered. Chief, I didn't mean, he began, but Marcus cut him off sharply. You never paused to consider the consequences of your actions, did you? Your impulsive behavior is a symptom of a larger problem, a problem that has undermined the trust between this department and the people we serve. The room fell into a heavy silence. Marcus's next words came with measured intensity. Today, I am announcing a change. The behavior I witnessed is not isolated, it is part of a toxic culture that has long festered within these walls. And that ends now. He stepped back toward the podium, his voice rising with conviction. Effective immediately, Officer Johnson is suspended pending a full internal investigation. Let this be a clear message. This is not a mere slap on the wrist, it is the first step in a series of changes that will redefine our department's core values. A collective gasp filled the room. Officer Johnson's face was a mask of humiliation and anger, and as whispers spread among the officers, it became clear that the dynamics of the precinct were shifting. This isn't about punishment, Marcus emphasized, his tone even and resolute. It's about setting a standard. If you are not prepared to meet that standard, then this isn't the place for you. But if you are ready to do better and be better, then we will move forward together. And make no mistake, I will hold every one of you accountable. After a long, weighted pause, the briefing concluded. The officers left the room in a subdued procession, their usual banter replaced by silent contemplation. Marcus lingered at the podium a moment longer, watching as Officer Johnson stormed out, his anger palpable and his head hung low. The room, once filled with casual indifference, now buzzed with a mixture of fear, respect, and the promise of change. Later that day, in the quiet of his modest office, Marcus sat behind his desk reflecting on the monumental task ahead. Changing the deeply ingrained attitudes within the precinct would not be easy or immediate. There were those who would cling to the old ways, and the process of reform was bound to be turbulent. Yet, Marcus's resolve was unwavering. He had come to Greenwood not to be a friend to everyone, but to be a force for genuine transformation, a leader committed to restoring integrity and dignity to a department that had lost its way. His phone rang, and when he answered, he heard the steady, supportive voice of Captain Daniels. "Chief, I have to say you handled that briefing better than most would have," the captain remarked cautiously. Marcus replied, "Thank you, Captain. But we've only just begun. The real work starts now." Captain Daniels continued, "I need a complete review of Officer Johnson's records on my desk by tomorrow, every complaint, every report, every detail. We must leave no stone unturned." Marcus acknowledged the task with a firm nod and a determined silence before hanging up and turning his attention back to the mountain of paperwork that awaited him. In the weeks that followed, the precinct began to show signs of transformation. The toxic energy that had once been taken for granted gradually gave way to a cautious new atmosphere. Officers who had once shared in the derision of unprofessional conduct began to distance themselves from those behaviors. Whispers of Officer Johnson's suspension became a constant reminder that disrespect would no longer be tolerated. Marcus made it a point to patrol the hallways regularly, greeting every officer with a firm nod or a few direct, encouraging words. His presence served as a living reminder that change was not only possible but necessary. One day, while walking the halls, Marcus was approached by a young officer named Officer Ramirez. With eyes that betrayed both nervousness and hope, she admitted, "Chief, I know I haven't always done the right thing. I've seen and even participated in some of the behavior that South made this place toxic. I'm tired of it, and I want to do better." Marcus's response was warm yet resolute. "That's exactly the kind of honesty we need. Change starts with each one of you taking responsibility. I'm here to support you, but you must first support yourselves." Officer Ramirez's hopeful expression told Marcus that even in a culture steeped in old habits, the seeds of transformation were beginning to take root. Despite these hopeful signs, not every officer was ready to embrace the new way of doing things. Some resisted the changes with quiet defiance or outright hostility. Officer Johnson, despite his suspension and subsequent appeal, became a symbol of everything that needed to be purged. When his appeal was denied after a thorough review of his record which revealed a long history of misconduct and disregard for protocol, it became clear to everyone that Marcus was not interested in cosmetic adjustments. His mission was to overhaul the culture of the entire precinct, even if it meant facing backlash from those most entrenched in the old ways. In the midst of these challenges, positive moments began to shine through. At a community event organized in Greenwood, Marcus had the opportunity to engage with local residents directly. There, he met a young boy with wide, curious eyes who timidly approached him. "Are you really the chief?" the boy asked, his voice barely a whisper. Marcus knelt down to the boy's level, his smile gentle and genuine. "I am," he said softly, "and I'm here to make sure that every person in this community is treated with respect." The boy's eyes lit up as he added, "My dad always says the police don't care about us." Marcus's heart went out to him. "I can't change the past," he replied, "but I promise you that we are working every day to do better. If you ever need help, or if you have a question about how we're making things better, just come find me." That moment, filled with raw sincerity and hope, reinforced Marcus's belief that true change was possible when leaders and community members worked together. As months passed, the precinct slowly evolved. Officers who once participated in or ignored toxic behaviors were gradually replaced by new recruits, individuals who shared Marcus's vision for fairness, respect, and accountability. The community, initially skeptical of the reforms, began to notice a tangible shift. People started to see the positive effects of a department that no longer took disrespect for granted. Neighborhood meetings, previously tense and distrustful, turned into discussions of progress, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. One crisp evening, as Marcus stood in the main hallway of the precinct watching officers leave after their shifts, he felt a quiet satisfaction. The laughter and camaraderie that filled the corridors were now free from cruelty or condescension. They were genuine and heartfelt. In that moment, Marcus reflected on the journey they had all undertaken, a journey that had been fraught with challenges, but one that was steering the department toward a brighter future. Before closing the day, Marcus took one last walk through the precinct. He stopped by Officer Ramirez's station, where she was busy reviewing case files. "Officer Ramirez," he said in a low but firm tone, "I want you to know that every step you take toward doing the right thing matters. This isn't just about following orders, it's about building a legacy of trust and respect for the community." Her determined nod was all the affirmation he needed. That night, as the building grew quiet, Marcus sat back at his desk and reviewed the day's events. He knew that the transformation he envisioned was only just beginning. Deep-seated attitudes might take years to change, and there would always be obstacles to overcome. Yet, he also knew that every honest conversation, every accountable act, and every moment of genuine respect was a victory in itself, a victory that would eventually ripple outward, touching the lives of every community member. In a follow-up meeting with his senior staff the next day, Marcus laid out his plan for continuing the reforms. "Our journey won't be easy," he told them, "but I promise you that every decision we make from now on will be guided by the principles of respect, fairness, and accountability. We owe it to ourselves and to the people who look to us for protection and guidance." The room was filled with both resolve and a cautious optimism that hinted at a new beginning. One of his colleagues, Lieutenant Edwards, spoke up. "Chief, your actions have already started to shift the atmosphere here. Even the younger officers seem more willing to speak up for what's right." Marcus nodded, replying, "Every small act of courage matters. Change is not instantaneous, it's built, moment by moment, through the decisions we make. And I believe that together, we can rebuild the trust that has been lost for far too long." As the weeks turned into months, stories of transformation began to surface. Officer Ramirez, once hesitant and unsure, emerged as a beacon of integrity. She started mentoring newer recruits, encouraging them to challenge outdated practices and to stand up against any form of disrespect. "I've seen firsthand how small actions can make a difference," she would say, inspiring her peers to be more accountable. Her transformation was a clear sign that even in an environment riddled with past misdeeds, hope could take root and flourish. Another powerful moment came during a community outreach program organized at the local community center. Marcus was invited to speak about the changes underway at the precinct. Facing a crowd of residents, he recounted the story of that fateful morning when a single act of disdain set off a chain reaction leading to systemic reform. "There was a time when disrespect was the norm," he told the audience, "but every act of disrespect also became a catalyst for change. I stand here today to tell you that every one of us deserves to be treated with dignity." The audience, moved by his sincerity, responded with an outpouring of support that reaffirmed Marcus's commitment to his mission. In one particularly memorable exchange at the community center, a local woman asked, "How can we be sure that these changes will truly make a difference?" Marcus replied, "By holding ourselves accountable, by demanding respect for every individual whether on these streets or in our precinct, and by never settling for anything less than a community where everyone matters." His words resonated deeply, and as the meeting concluded, many residents approached him with their own stories of small acts that had made a big impact in their lives. As the first year of Marcus's leadership came to a close, the transformation within the department was undeniable. The toxic attitudes that once reigned were steadily being replaced by a culture of mutual respect and accountability. The community, which had long harbored distrust, began to see a tangible change in the way officers interacted with one another and with the citizens they served. One cool autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus walked the halls one final time for the day. In the quiet of the nearly empty precinct, he paused by a bulletin board where notes of thanks and support from community members and fellow officers were pinned. Reading through the messages, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction and hope. Every note, every word of encouragement, was proof that even in the darkest times, change was not only possible, it was happening. Before the video fades out, here's one final thought to leave you with. Have you ever witnessed a small act that changed an entire system? Share your story in the comments below and let us know how one simple act of courage transformed your life or community. What would you do if you saw someone being disrespected, knowing that one small act of defiance could spark an entire movement? Could your courage help change the world around you? Let these questions inspire you. Join the conversation below, and stay tuned for our next video where we explore more real-life stories of accountability, transformation, and the power of standing up for what's right.